this summer will be a left-sided centre-back. He wants to find a partner for Cameron Carter-Vickers of a similar quality. And that was always, for me, going to be a key component in terms of what Celtic need to do in the transfer market this summer. Clearly, he's your man. And so that'll be fascinating, because if that was the target, and the target was to find a left-sided version of Cameron Carter-Vickers, someone equally reliable, equally robust, defensively solid, that could be a really important signing, especially in terms of where, you know, Celtic really see their priority next season, and you know, making an imprint in the Champions League. I think that's where you need two central defenders of a similar level. And be fascinating to see if this is the guy, if he is the same level as Cameron Carter-Vickers, who has been exceptional.
Do you think it's a wee bit harsh on Liam Scales, Keith? Look, I thought really come on last year.
You know what I think about Liam Scales, and I was singing his praises throughout, and he's another one of these players that's just come on leaps and bounds under Brendan Rodgers. You can see that he's benefited from working with Brendan Rodgers, and you can see his development and his progression as a player. And yes, I was fulsome in my praise for Liam Scales, and I felt a bit sorry for him when he lost his place at points to Austin Trusty, because that was, you know, always looked as if it might be in the cards, but he knuckled down and he won his place back. So yeah, I do feel a bit sorry for him, but you know what it's like, injuries, suspensions. Liam Scales will still be a big player for Celtic, but I think the priority for Brendan Rodgers, one of his priorities, was to find somebody who, all things being equal and everybody being fit, would be a match and a partner for Cameron Carter-Vickers, and that's clearly what they think they're getting.
The fascinating thing about that, Keith, is that, and I'm not saying they shouldn't go and sign the Japanese boy, they don't need somebody in that position, but as you say, if he comes in and just say as the first pick alongside Carter-Vickers, all of a sudden he's brilliant. I mean, it leaves them with Trusty, Scales, Nawrocki, Lagerbielke, Welsh. I mean, we talk about Rangers having to get rid of guys who are surplus to requirements. Celtic will then find themselves in that position as well. It's fascinating. I know there's been interest, obviously, in Lagerbielke and Nawrocki in particular. Stephen Welsh was out on loan at Mechelen in Belgium last season. So there is interest there, but it is going to be fascinating to see how that area of the squad shapes up, and whether they can get these guys out, and how Brendan Rodgers kind of views it going into the start of the new season.
Yeah, but you know, clearly, Scott, in terms of what Brendan Rodgers is trying to do, is to improve his starting 11, to make Celtic better, to improve the quality. That's the words that he uses, and he's obviously looked at what the options are, and he's just not quite convinced that his left-sided centre-half is as good as his right-sided centre-half, and I would agree with him. Even though, as I said, you know, I'm very mindful of the progress that Liam Scales has made over the last 12 months in particular, but I couldn't disagree with that assessment.
Like I say, a lot of people asking about Celtic signing a striker. Jason kills two birds with one stone here with some of the things we want to talk about. He says he hopes Celtic sign Shankland. Now, we'll come on to Lawrence Shankland in a minute, but I just want to get your guys' take on, I mean, surely it's a no-brainer. Celtic will sign a striker in this transfer window.
I think they'll sign two, Daniel.
Okay.
I think it's an area, again, where Brendan Rodgers wants to bolster and increase his options. Celtic have got plenty of money, and it might be, you know, listen, Shankland one's not the worst idea in the world, is it? Pick him up for free, and you know he's a goal scorer. We've talked about Majowski previously, being a guy that's got that, you know, ability to score goals and a track record in the Scottish Premier League, Premiership. So these guys would be always, I think something like that, but then I do think they'll push the boat out for a striker of significant value, and it'll cost a hefty fee. I expect to see that this summer. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if Celtic signed two strikers over the course.
I'm not sure. I think maybe just one, Daniel. I think maybe one big striker signing to go in and complement Adam Ida, knowing that they've got Daizen Maeda, obviously, who finished the season as centre forward, and very good. He was in that position as well. Obviously, it depends, I suppose, on how many wide players. Obviously, Nygren has come in. There's uncertainty over Kuhn. Jota's injured, so it'll be a kind of balancing act for Brendan Rodgers, especially with Maeda knowing that he can play in the two positions. But when I'm getting the young boy in for Fulham, and I don't think that's done yet, but it looks if is that done yet? The young boy for Fulham.
Don't think it's been announced, no. Callum Osman.
Yeah, but it looks if he's going to come in, which I said before might kind of replace Johnny Kenny, who looks as if he's on his way out. But I think with Ida and one other big incoming striker, knowing that you've got Maeda and other wide players, obviously, I think that might be enough for them. Wouldn't it surprise me if Jacko's right, they signed to it, but I think if they get one big first pick striker and then Brendan Rodgers will be pretty happy.
This is based on absolutely nothing, right? As most things are that I say on the show. But Keith, do you know who I've got a feeling Celtic's big signing, big striker signing will be?
Go on.
Evan Ferguson.
Well, we did discuss this previously, didn't we? And
We did.
You know what I said, Daniel, is if it is, then I think Celtic fans will need to be patient, because that feels to me like very much an end of the window sort of a signing. I think a lot of things would have to fall into place, including, you know, a lack of Premier League interest in Evan Ferguson, and you could. He's not had a great last 12, 18 months, has he? But as we said, when he burst onto the scene at Brighton, he was phenomenal. And you looked at him, you thought, you've got the full package here in terms of your physicality, your power, pace, real natural finisher. He kind of looked like the young Irish version of Harry Kane.
Mm-hmm.
And he was, by the way, that wasn't a fanciful sort of comparison, because I think at one point during that season he was going goal for goal just about with Harry Kane. And he just looked as if he was going to be the absolute full package. And as I said, I remember, you know, sort of feeling a bit jealous that he wasn't Scottish, because, you know, we've been crying out for exactly this sort of breakthrough striker. But it hasn't worked for him over the last while. That's a concern. It didn't work when he went on loan to West Ham. Now the question is there Premier League managers or clubs out there looking at him thinking, do you know what we could do with him? He could, you know, he could light a fire here. Mm-hmm. Because if there is Premier League interest, it makes it really difficult for Celtic to compete. It's one of them that if it gets to the end of the window and he's not gone anywhere, there's been no transfer or loan deal or anything like that, at that point I think Celtic become, you know, a significant player in that, and it would become possible to get him perhaps initially on loan or whatever. As I said, I think if it is to be Ferguson, it's one of them that you're going to have to wait for a few weeks to find out.
I agree with everything you've said about Ferguson there, Jacko. But do you know, I think he's too similar to Ida. I don't think. I think Brendan Rodgers will be looking for a quicker, more nimble
Kyogo type.
Yeah, playing on the shoulder, the ability to run in behind. Aye, that kind of Kyogo type of striker. I think Ferguson and Ida, I'm not saying they're exactly the same player. They've got their own attributes, but I think they'd be too similar to get into that Celtic squad together. I think with Ida up there, Brendan Rodgers will be looking for something different. I might be wrong, but, and by the way, as I say, I agree with everything you've said about Ferguson. When he came through at Brighton, I mean, my God, he looked like an absolute world beater. So, if you'd have said then Celtic might have the chance to get him at some point, you'd have bitten their hand off. But it obviously hasn't gone right for him for whatever reason the last year, 18 months. And right now, is he any better than Adam Ida? Probably not. And as I say, I think they're quite similar in how they play. So I think Celtic will look for something a bit different, more in the Kyogo mould.
Yeah, to mix up the options a little bit. You might be right, Scott. But I'm telling you now, if you did get the chance to get him on loan at the end of the window, it would be
just take him anyway.
Well, I think it'd be very hard not to, wouldn't it?